When I was 14 years old, I started parkour. And now at 33 and looking back, I think those first 6 to 8 months of doing parkour were the most transformative time of my life. I later was fortunate enough to win 3 world championship titles, to be sponsored by Red Bull. I now have their most viewed video on the entire Red Bull channel with 160 million views. And I then went on to start my own clothing and shoe brand, all centered around the parkour lifestyle with a few friends. And when people see me move and they hear about my career, a question I often get is, did you do gymnastics before you started parkour? Do you have a martial arts background? And they're usually surprised to hear that I didn't have any of that. When I started parkour, I was a video game nerd. I was not athletic. I was not fit. And I did not intend to become a professional athlete. The truth is that I was playing video games all day and I had given up hope to be good at any sport ever. But we're going to get into that later. Today, so I have my notes here because this is going to be a longer video that really goes into detail and is hopefully going to help you understand if starting parkour is maybe interesting to you and basically what the benefits of doing parkour is. Because those first 6 to 8 months, they really changed and transformed me from this video game nerd into a new person who was then able to achieve all these things. It was not me who I think was special, who started parkour and then did all these things. I was able to do all these things because of the person I became after those first 6 to 8 months of doing parkour. And I think that transformation is to some extent possible for anybody. And that's what I want to talk to you about today, is about my journey, how that happened to me, and why I think parkour is so transformative for people out there. And also why I think parkour has a bit of an image problem today and what I hope to do about it. And also why that image problem is partly my fault as well. So, as I said, I started out with parkour as a complete nerd. I had played handball for 5 years just because that's my sports background, and that's just because in my part of town, handball is what everybody does. So at 5 years old, my parents put me into the handball club, and I did that for 5 years. And when I was 10 and I started to have a little bit more of a mind of my own, I realized I'm not really into this. And then I tried a bunch of different sports for 5 years because I felt like, yes, I do want to do sports. Obviously, they're healthy, even though I was not good at them. I was below average in all of them I tried. I did want to have a sport to call my own. So I tried everything from football to kung fu, capoeira, even fencing, skateboarding. But I didn't stick with anything for longer than a month. There was nothing that really managed to capture me that I was really excited about. Until eventually I found parkour. And it's not like I found parkour and I initially fell in love with it and decided this is my calling. I feel like this idea we get from Hollywood or the media or even people telling their stories when they find the thing they love and it changes their life forever, that was not true for me. Like, actually, I had to see parkour a few times before I decided, yes, I'm even going to try it. And even when I tried it, it wasn't immediately clear that this is what I want to do. The first time I saw parkour was in a movie. I thought it was just stuntmen, and then I saw parkour in I saw a martial arts tricking video, and I saw a guy doing flips outside, and I had the usual excuses, right? I'm like, well, they have a gym, they probably have a background, they probably have a coach, they can learn in a safe environment, they started when they were really young. This is not achievable for me. Until at some point, my friend encountered a little TV piece, and he recorded on VHS back then that just in 5 minutes quickly told a story about these kids in the Parisian suburbs, how they taught themselves to overcome obstacles, gave a little bit of the philosophy behind it, and that finally made it click for me, where I realized, okay, I don't need a coach, I can just go out and practice this by myself. And that's what my friend and I did. This was before YouTube. We managed to find just a little bit of information online, a little website that had photos of the basic parkour moves like balancing, vaulting, a wall run, a tic-tac, where you do a step on the wall. And we just went out and we tried our best to teach it ourselves. And it was very, very exciting. And I'm gonna talk a little bit about these mental changes that then happened to me fairly quickly once I started parkour, but I want to stay for a moment on this topic of how do you know that something is for you? How do you know that something is your calling? It's something that's really interesting to me because for me, it was not obvious that I wanted to do parkour when I was in the moment. But looking back, I realized that this fascination with this type of movement was always with me. And the way this came out was, I have a few examples that I can clearly remember. Was number one, I loved Jackie Chan movies. Like, they were always so fascinating to me, even though I was not allowed to watch them when I was young. Whenever I could get a glimpse of them, I was like, oh, wow, cool. What is he doing? All the fight scenes. I would soak them in before my parents would come in and be like, you're too young to watch this, and made me watch something else. I also was always fascinated by any types of flips. Like when I remember one time I was at the public pool and a guy did a backflip and I was just mesmerized by it, and I would just stay right there on my towel and I was focused on him, waiting for him to do it again. And then I mentioned before, I tried capoeira. I really was into that. It was just unfortunately on the other side of town. I didn't have a train ticket. It would have been too expensive for me to do it. And I still remember clearly that when I practiced handball, we would do this exercise where we would all stand in line, and with our partner, we would pass the ball back and forth as we ran across the field towards the goal, and whoever had the ball when we got to the goal would throw it into the goal. And that exercise was boring to me, but at the end of every exercise, we would walk back around the field and we would stand back in line. But someone had forgotten to put the crash mat back up from the previous training session. So there was just a crash mat in the corner next to the wall. And every time before I would go back into line, I would do a step on the wall and I would try to do a wall flip and I would land on my knees and then I would get into line. And that was like the one thing I was excited about before I got to do the handball exercise. I just wanted to try the flip on the wall. And even when I think about the video games that I was fascinated about, like I played all the games. I played Counter-Strike, I played Diablo, I played Ragnarok Online. But the favorite games to me were always the games where you could jump and you could do flips and you could do acrobatics, like the Prince of Persia series. I love that series. You could do wall runs and fight by doing these flips over the enemies. So thinking back, this fascination with movement was there for as long as I can remember. I just didn't realize that was actually what I would enjoy doing as a sport. And part of that was because I didn't know that kind of sport existed. I didn't know it was possible for me to still learn all these skills when I was 14. So it's maybe interesting for you to think about, does anything like this resonate with you? Are there any moments that you can think back, or any games you enjoyed, or any movies you enjoyed, or any moments that stuck with you where you're like, oh yeah, I am fascinated by this? And we'll get back to this later when I talk a little bit about following your curiosity and following your calling, or the voice inside your head that is telling you like this is something interesting for you. But once I actually, I guess the point I'm saying is that voice that's telling you this is for you, this is what you're interested in, this is a passion you should explore, that voice is probably a lot quieter than you think. At least for me, it was not shouting at me. It was this quiet voice, and it was very easy to ignore it. And once I did follow that voice and I did start parkour, it's crazy how doing parkour transformed me. And I think that's the true power of parkour. I think now that I look back at parkour and why I wish for the people who are interested in it to at least give it a try, is that parkour is such a powerful sport when it comes to strengthening, developing your personality. And especially for me as a teenager, it was, this is such a hard topic to start. So I'm going to start with saying, with telling you what the first thing that's going to happen to you is. If you start parkour, the first thing that's going to happen to you is you're going to unlock what we call the parkour vision. And that is this change in how you see the world. Because when you grow up, what happens is, as a kid, parkour comes naturally to you, right? You haven't learned yet that a chair is a chair, that's to sit on. A table is a table, that's where you have your meal or do your homework. When you grow up and you're a kid, everything can be used for anything. You can climb on the chair, you can flip it over, it can turn into a fort, you can dance on the table, you can do all these things. And then as you get older, you learn that they have a purpose, and that's the only thing you're supposed to use it for. And then you grow up and you have to deal with the seriousness of life. The more you mature, you have to learn to be on time, to be responsible, to put yourself together, to clean your room, how to fit into society. Things become cool, you can be judged, what type of music you listen to matters, how the other sex perceives you becomes so important, you don't want to embarrass yourself. So you really learn to control yourself and fit in. And that is so important as a teenager, that I think in doing that, this childlike sense can get lost. And when I look at how much of spirituality and psychology is focused on reconnecting with your inner child, I realized that parkour gave me that the second I decided to do it. Because what happens is, once you go outside with the intention to do parkour, or even with parkour in your mind, all of a sudden the whole world around you has changed. All of a sudden you don't see a handrail just as a handrail anymore. It can be a stepping stone, a launch pad, something to propel you in a different direction. You see all these little obstacles and opportunities to move and to explore all around you. So you all of a sudden gain this sense of childlike excitement around the world and this sense of adventure and exploration back that I think a lot of us lose when we grow up. And we all think about kids and how fascinating their ability is to walk down the street and be fascinated with a flower, a rock, a little insect, and spend so much time just exploring the world around them that has become so mundane for us. And the beauty about parkour is that if you do parkour, you manage to keep a lot of that sense of wonder. And it just makes even the most boring city or neighborhood a place of adventure and something worthy of exploring. And that is, again, I'm talking about this crucial period when you start parkour and how quickly it transforms you. And this is like an effect that you feel immediately. It just takes you to watch a few parkour videos and look outside of the window, and it's changed how you see the world. And it's so fun and exciting. And the next thing that happens is, when you start parkour and you actually want to go and learn parkour, is you're probably going to feel a sense of self-consciousness or maybe embarrassment or awkwardness, because you're going to go outside into the world and you're going to try this new thing that you're not good at, and you're immediately going to think about what you look like to other people around you. And this was an especially strong sensation for me, because when I started parkour was just becoming more well-known and popular. It was kind of the first wave of parkour arriving outside of France, and most people had never heard of it. I only heard about it because I was a nerd that I was spending a lot of time on online forums, and by chance. So when we went out to do parkour in the beginning, nobody had even heard about what parkour was. They were looking at us and thinking, are you trying to break into this house? What are you doing? Do you think you're like 8 years old? What is the deal? Like, we would have to explain over and over and over again to people around us what we were doing. And that's why it was quite embarrassing to do parkour in the beginning, because we were, like, me and my friend, we started doing it together. My friend David, we were not great at it. We were nerds. We didn't look graceful or exciting or impressive what we were doing. And on top of them, nobody had any idea of what we were doing, right? If we were out with a skateboard and we were terrible at skateboarding, at least people would understand, oh, they're trying to skateboard. They're not good yet, but they're trying. And we just looked like, I don't know what we looked like. But we were quite self-conscious. And in the beginning, we kept parkour a secret from our parents, and we would go practice in areas where there were not many people around. And that painful experience about parkour is, I think, what holds a lot of people back from starting parkour. A lot of people are more comfortable trying parkour in a gym or with a local parkour community or at a parkour park, because it's that feeling of judgment you feel from other people is not as strong. But actually, I think this is not a bug of parkour. I think it's a feature. I think this is actually was a really important lesson for me to learn, because I had to overcome that feeling, right? I was out there and I was training at a spot, trying to figure out a move, couldn't do it, and all of a sudden a tram stops and 10 people start walking past. And in the beginning, I would stop what I was doing because I felt embarrassed. and I would wait for everybody to pass, and then I started practicing again. But of course, this I quickly started realizing that, hey, just because this is embarrassing and just because other people don't understand what I'm doing doesn't mean I have to feel embarrassed about it. Doesn't mean I'm not allowed to do it. And I learned the important lesson that it's worthwhile doing something if it's enjoyable to you. And as long as you're not hurting anybody or messing with anybody, then nobody has any business judging you. And people were probably not even really judging me. This was just what I was projecting onto them. But I learned the lesson that if I enjoy it and I want to do this, that is good enough of a reason for me to do it. It doesn't have to be cool. It doesn't have to be impressive. It's worthwhile for me to do something just because I enjoy it. And that sounds really obvious, and that is what we hear all the time in popular media. You be yourself and follow your passion. But if you're actually out there and you're not just doing something that is unpopular or people don't understand, and on top of that, you're not good at it, so you're making mistakes in public in front of people, that very obvious message is very hard to execute in real life. And that is obviously not just true for parkour, that is true for day-to-day situations. And having parkour, especially as a teenager, was really an important space for me to practice that. I could really focus on that feeling and question that feeling and overcome that feeling and practice that. So I became able to do parkour not just by myself out there, but also in front of 2 people, 3 people, 10 people, 20 people. And eventually I'm now able to do things that look weird and strange to other people, but I can still do them and do them comfortably because I now understand, I feel comfortable in myself. And this is not something that I learned once, I'm now able to do. This is something that I have to practice again and again and again, right? This is a tool that you have to keep. It's like meditation. You got to keep this tool sharp and you got to keep practicing it, because if not, you're going to fall back in those old patterns where you worry too much about what other people think about you. So once you overcome those 2 things, or you go out there, you see the world again for its opportunity and its possibility, and you actually manage to be a beginner, which is a painful process for anything you're going to start, then what's going to happen next is that you're probably going to start comparing yourself to others. And this was especially true for me because I was not athletic, and I would look around me and there were so many people that were better at parkour than me. And I was also part of online forums where people would post their videos and they would say, this is me after 6 months, this is me after 1 year of doing parkour, or after 2 years of doing parkour. And I would look at their videos and I would be very humbled because I would feel like, man, they're so much better than me. They're progressing so much faster than me. They're learning moves that took me 6 months in maybe a week, and they have so much power, they're jumping so much further. So it's really easy in an individual sport to compare yourself to other people. And over time, I learned from listening to other people that yes, it's great for me to compare myself to other people, but that is not how I should judge my ability. The better way to judge my ability is to compare my ability now to how good I was the day before. Am I making progress? And no matter how fast or slow that progress is happening, as long as I'm improving, I'm moving in the right direction. And I don't have to look, I just have to focus on every day and being 1% better every day. And that lesson is really what carried me through my whole career later on. Is there's always a 20-year-old who's already made $10 million. There's already a 16-year-old who has it all figured out. There's always someone who's only been doing it for 2 years, but they're already amazing while you're still trying to figure this out. But once you learn to just compare yourself to yourself while still getting inspiration and seeing what's possible by looking around you, that's when you unlock this very healthy way of looking at your progress and looking at yourself, and you can really become proud of your achievements. And that was an important lesson to learn for me. And I think without parkour as this space where I could learn these lessons, it would have been a lot harder for me to learn it, and I don't think I would have maybe ever gotten gotten as good as it if I didn't have a space like parkour to really deal with those emotions and practice that. And the next thing I learned is how to overcome my fears. And this is something that is going to happen to some people sooner or later in parkour. Because obviously, you start parkour really basic. You start jumping from one curb to another. You start doing the little step on a wall. I started jumping over bushes or fences. And that was really fun. And then obviously, you get to a point where instead of jumping from a curb to another curb, you want to jump from a ping pong table to a bench. And you look at the jump and you're standing right there and you want to commit, but you can't. You freeze and you think about, why can I not do this? I jumped exactly the same distance from a curb to a curb, yet now I'm just at knee height and it's terrifying and I can't do it, yet I can do it easily on ground level. And that is when fear comes into parkour. And for some people, it will come earlier or later. Some people have the opposite problem, where they're not afraid enough. I feel like we all have two bars of ability inside of ourselves. One is the physical ability. These are the things that we can do. And this is the potential we have. And then we have the mental ability, which is how afraid or brave we are. And some people are very, very capable, yet their bravery is very low. They can't unlock all that ability that they have because they're so scared. And then there are other people who are physically maybe not as capable, but still they might perform better because mentally their mind and their body are in more of an equilibrium. And then all the way on the other end of the scale, you have people who are very scary to watch, who have not that much ability, but their bravery, their balls far exceed their skills. And whenever you watch them, you're like, oh no, he survived. Okay, it's very scary. And balancing those two is a big part of what it means to learn parkour. And I think parkour is an especially good sport to learn how to do that, because you can really sit with that feeling. Of course, fear is a part of a lot of other sports. For example, fighting sports like boxing. Once you get punched in the face, you're going to feel afraid. And a big part of boxing, at least when I ever do any sparring, is to unlock or to go into more of a primal state of mind where you're in this fighting flow state and you're able to ignore the fear or overcome the fear and stay focused in the moment. And to me, that way of overcoming fear is very different than parkour, because so many things are happening at the same time. It has to happen so quickly, and you have to kind of go into this flow state. You don't really have time to observe what your brain is doing. Whereas when you do parkour and you're looking at a jump, you can look at a jump for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, days and weeks. You can come back to a jump that you know you can physically do, but every time you look at it, you can really observe what your brain is doing. Where's your brain going? What is your mind thinking of? What horror scenarios is your brain throwing at you? What doubts are you coming up with? Stories are you telling yourself in your head while you're looking at something that you're clearly capable of doing? And the beauty of parkour is then that through practice, through overcoming small fears, and then you become more brave and you learn how to overcome fears. And I think a good metaphor for that is that you learn to listen to your fear. A lot of people think, they look at parkour and they think, you don't feel any fear. But the truth is, even the most skilled parkour athletes are still afraid. What we manage to do in parkour is we manage to not have fear in the driver's seat. So if I'm driving my car, I'm sitting in the driver's seat and fear is on the passenger seat. I'm listening to what my fear is telling me. I'm listening to all the bad things that could happen, but I'm still the one who has the steering wheel in my hand, and I get to decide if I'm still going to do it or not. Am I able to take this risk, or is this too dangerous for me and I should start with a smaller challenge? And that is something that I think parkour is uniquely good at teaching people, is how to put fear in the passenger seat. And of course, that is so valuable in everyday life. There are so many situations where you know the right thing to do and you are faced with a difficult situation. For me, back then as a teenager, the obvious thing I was afraid of was talking to girls. It's staying calm and collected while looking a female in the eye and listening to what they say without being absolutely terrified. And parkour helped me to become more brave and be able to do things that I know I could do even though I was afraid of them. And if you manage to do these things, quick recap, right? You manage to listen to that voice inside you that's telling you this is something you want to do. You follow your curiosity and you start parkour. You then actually go out there, you connect with your inner child again, and you can see this world of opportunity and excitement all around you where before maybe it was boring. You then learn that it is good for you to follow that feeling, even if maybe it's unpopular, if other people don't understand it. And then you also manage to just compare yourself to you and stay on your own journey. You already have so many things going for you, right? That is such a good lesson to learn, especially for me as a teenager. That was so important, and it was the foundation for anything else I was going to do later in life. But none of that would have actually really enabled me to win world championships, to design my own clothing, to make these videos, if I wouldn't have had this last enlightening moment. And I'm going to have a little story here to kind of, a jump that was a turning point for me. And this jump was a gap from one garage to another. So it was about 1 story high. It was in the suburbs, not too far from here. Sometimes I'd take the train past this row of houses, and the garages in front of the houses were spaced out in such a way that between 2 of the garages, there was a really nice gap. And the gap was maybe as far as wide as a Jeep, a car. So it was not that big of a gap, but it being high up made it so scary for me, and it became this gap that I wanted to do. But for 4, 5, 6 months, I kept telling myself, I can do it, but I'm mentally not ready. I'm not ready to commit. I'm not ready to do it. And then I think around half a year of doing parkour, I was in bed at night, and I couldn't fall asleep, and all of a sudden I felt like I'm ready for that jump. I'm ready to do it, and I want to do it right now. So I put on my training clothes, I snuck out of the house, jumped on my bike, I cycled for 20 minutes to get to that jump, and I was fully aware that if anybody in that house looks out of their window right now and they see me on top of their garage, they're probably going to freak out and think I'm trying to break into their house. So my plan was to climb onto the garage, run, hit the jump, and be back on my bike on my way home in like 30 seconds. However, things didn't go that way, because once I got up onto the garage, I became terrified. I was like, no, this is too scary. I can't do it. I need more time. I have to, this is more scary than I thought. I looked at the jump and I was like, fuck, I can't do it. I can't do it. So I was laying on top of this garage and I was trying to hype myself up for this jump. And after about 5 or 10 minutes, I took a deep breath and I was ready, and I got up and I ran, had like 3 steps of run up, hit the jump, landed it perfectly, climbed down, got back on my bike, and cycled home with like the biggest smile on my face. And I felt so proud and so accomplished. And I think this moment in particular was a big one for me, because I realized that if you would have asked me before I started parkour, or even when I just started parkour, if I was ever able to do that jump, I would have said, no way, I can't do that. That's too scary. I can't jump that far. I'm not an athletic person. I would have never thought that I would be able to hit that gap one day. Yet, I had just done it, and not just had I done it quite well, I also had done it in such a short time, right? I only started parkour like half a year ago. So I realized that actually I have no idea what my own potential is. I was telling myself all these things I couldn't do, and I had just learned that I had been not just a little bit wrong, but completely wrong. So I thought to myself, who am I to tell myself what I can and what I cannot do? Clearly, I have absolutely no idea what my potential is. And once I didn't worry about how good I could get at parkour, and I just took it day by day, and I was enjoying it, I was focusing on becoming 1% better every day, all of a sudden I looked up and I was able to do these things that I thought were impossible before. And that then that realization didn't stay limited to parkour. I started looking around myself and was thinking, well, what other things am I telling myself I can't do? What other things am I telling myself I'm bad at or I'm never going to be good at? And what other things am I into? And I may be telling myself, like, look, this is not for you. You're not going to be the guy. So once I realized this, I started applying this to all the other aspects of my life. I applied it to one of my other interests, which was filmmaking. I applied it to negotiation and business and started getting parkour jobs and made a career out of parkour. I later on applied it to Farang, a clothing brand, where we came in and we had no idea how to run a YouTube channel or run a brand or design clothing and design a shoe. But by taking it one step at a time, designing a t-shirt first, figuring out all the details, making all these mistakes, eventually we got to a point where now we're designing our own shoe. And all these lessons I learned in parkour were such a game changer for me and really unlocked all this good in my life that happened to me. And it's crazy now looking back 20 years later and thinking about how different my life would have been if I would have never learned parkour, if I would have never started parkour, and especially if I wouldn't have learned these lessons in those first 6 months. And what's crazy to me is that when I think about why am I still doing parkour today, I realize it's because, yes, I enjoy moving, but it's because I want to keep these skills sharp. And parkour is my place where I can go practice those mental skills. I can keep my sense of wonder for the world. I can get my regular practice in overcoming my fears and doing things that is maybe not reasonable to the other people around me. And then I can transfer those skills to everyday life. And that got me thinking about, oh my God, I wish more people would know this. I wish more people would start parkour, because actually the best thing you're going to learn in parkour is not going to be how to backflip. It's not going to be how to jump a roof gap. It's not even going to be how fit or strong you're going to get. It's these mental gains and how you're going to learn to, these mental gains you get from parkour, and you'll get these mental gains right away, so quickly, and you don't even have to do any crazy action or jumps to get those mental gains. You can get this positive transformation and benefit even just jumping over a few rails, learning how to balance, because it's not about becoming the best. It's just about challenging yourself and doing something new that you thought you couldn't do. And I wanted to share that with people. So I'm looking at my notes. Did I cover everything? Do I have all the mental lessons I wanted to talk about? So I realized the main benefit of parkour is not the skills you learn. It's not that you'll be able to save yourself out of a dangerous situation. Yes, it's nice if you learn how to do a parkour roll and you fall off a skateboard, you'll be able to probably not hurt yourself. You can just do a roll and you get back up on the board. All those skills are nice, but ultimately, there's more useful skills, more practical skills for everyday life. However, learning how to overcome your fear is an incredibly useful skill, and the benefit you're going to have in everyday life is impossible to measure. And that's why I wish more people out there who are interested in parkour would just give it a go. However, there are so many people I talk to about who want to learn parkour, but they usually say, well, I'm too old, or I'm not fit enough, or I'm too scared, or I'm afraid of injuring myself. It's not going to be good for my body. You have all these excuses to why people who, I'm not saying anybody should do parkour. I'm saying there's these people who are into parkour who are clearly fascinated by it. Why am I speaking like an Italian? Yet they have this perception of parkour where they think it's not for them. And this is where I get into the image problem that I see with parkour. Because this is going to be I'm going to go on a little tangent here to describe this. So I think a sport that does a really good job at presenting itself is rock climbing. Because in rock climbing, you have the Alex Honnold, who's kind of the hero of the sport, right? He does these free solo climbs that are incredibly difficult, that are incredibly dangerous. A tiny mistake could mean the end of his life. Yet this person, Alex Honnold, is not treated as a jackass, a risk taker, an adrenaline junkie. He is respected as a hero of the sport who is a testament, an aspirational figure, how good you can get at rock climbing and how amazing a human being can, how well a human being can be in control of their fear and how mentally strong a human can be. And then on the other side, you have competitive rock climbing that is celebrated, where rock climbers can be professional athletes and they can focus on their sport. And then you can also have recreational climbing, where people would look at Alex Honnold, but they realize, yes, that's an aspirational figure, but just because I enjoy climbing, I don't have to try to become Alex Honnold. I can just go bouldering on the weekends. I can go bouldering once or twice a week with my friends. It can be something I casually do that is fun and enjoyable, and it's going to be good for me. It's going to be healthy. I can start slow and I can level up and I can have all these physical and mental benefits from doing rock climbing. Yet in parkour, we have failed to paint the whole picture of the sport, of the discipline, to the general public. Because when I can at least tell when I talk to people about parkour, what they think about is the highest level of the sport. And I think I'm partly to blame for that, because what I did the last 10, 15 years is I was focused on introducing parkour to as many people as possible. And the best way to do that was through viral videos, by creating these videos that featured parkour and by presenting parkour in a way that it would reach the biggest audience possible. Because the idea was that the more people that see parkour are going to learn about parkour and are going to get into it and going to have that same similar experience and the same benefits that I had. However, those videos obviously didn't show the whole picture of parkour. They showed one side of parkour, and there was nobody doing the other side of it, right? There was very few people who were really showing parkour, how it, the other recreational side of parkour there are people who show the recreational side of parkour. There are organizations like Parkour Generations or Parkour Gyms who do a really good job at that. However, those people usually don't do as good of a job of reaching a lot of people. And that's really the skill I learned over the last 10, 15 years, is how do I reach as many people as possible with the message I'm trying to convey. And this is so hard to put into words. So now we have this situation where a lot of people know about parkour, but they don't know that they can do parkour in this way. So this is what I'm trying to do with the YouTube channel now, is I'm trying to communicate the full picture of parkour. I'm trying to transition away. Like I'm still going to have my hero moments where I can show how epic and badass and athletic and on a high level parkour can be performed. I'll still have my hero moments, but I think there are so many people doing that right now, and the social media algorithms are doing such an amazing job at pushing those viral parkour moments of the best athletes out to the public, that is already taken care of. I don't need to worry that much about introducing parkour to people. Actually, in fact, I think if I'm out on the street now, most people have heard about parkour. Back when I started, I had to explain what parkour was almost every training session. Somebody would come by and ask what I'm doing. What happens now is that people come by and are like, oh, cool, parkour. A mom will come by with their kid, and their kid will think like, oh, what is that? And the mom will be like, oh, this is parkour. This is what they're doing. And I feel like, oh man, that's so cool. Almost everybody in the world has now seen parkour, or at least has a rough understanding of what it is. But they don't understand yet that you can do parkour as a hobby. You don't have to be a professional athlete. You don't have to dedicate your whole life to it. And there's still going to be all these benefits that, as I said, you get early on in the parkour journey. So this is what I want to do right now on this channel, is I want to paint more of a full picture of parkour. And hopefully if you look at the last year of my content, you have a rough idea of what that's going to look like. I'm still figuring it out. I'm still learning. I'm still getting better at it, but I think it's going in the right direction. And then the other problem I found with parkour is that it's not that easy for people to start parkour. I think if you're lucky enough to have a parkour community, a parkour park, or a parkour gym in your city, then yes, it's much easier to learn parkour today than it was 10, 15 years ago. But on the other side, if you don't have that, if you're starting parkour like me, where you don't have any athletic experience, you don't have a coach, you don't have a gym, you don't have a local community, you kind of left to figure it out yourself, the only thing you can rely on to learn parkour is social media and YouTube tutorials. And while there are plenty of YouTube tutorials out there, when I was looking around and when people were asking me, I want to start parkour, how should I go about it? I never really felt great about any of the tutorials I could send them to. And this is true even for my own tutorial. I have a 1.5 hour tutorial that's got 2 or 3 million views out there, but I thought I can do a better job at this. And that's why I put together an online course. I wanted to represent parkour I wanted to make learning parkour as smooth and easy and enjoyable as possible without showing the sport without sacrificing the authenticity of the sport to make it viral. Because I think there's an inherent problem with putting learning materials on YouTube, in that you have to create that learning material, design that learning material in a way that you can get a lot of views. So with this channel, I didn't want to set myself up to have to chase the hundreds and thousands of millions of views. I wanted to get back on YouTube. I wanted to talk about parkour on YouTube, but I didn't want to have the pressure of making it viral, because what happens is when you have to make parkour viral on YouTube, you have to sacrifice a lot of the nuance of the sport and the details of the sport that I think make it so special. And in the very worst case, you end up running through your city in a Spider-Man costume, because that is the easiest way to turn parkour in a gimmick and make a lot of views and earn money through YouTube. I didn't want to do that. So I said, okay, I want to represent parkour authentically on YouTube. And when I do that, I'm going to be okay with not getting millions of views on all my videos, because I don't need to do that. Instead, I'm going to keep it authentic. The people who see the videos are going to really fall in love with what parkour is, and if they want to learn it, I can refer them to an online course. And I decided to put that online course, I decided to release it as a paid product, because that allowed me to really go into detail, and it allowed me to really make a high quality product, with the focus of it being the ideal video course for somebody who wants to learn parkour smoothly, not the ideal video tutorial to do well on YouTube, because that would mean I would have to sacrifice a lot of the things that I wanted to have in the course. And I think I'm now, of course, shameless self-promotion, I'm really proud with how that's going. Now I'm really excited for this new chapter in my life, where now I can focus on the things on the aspects of parkour that I think are the most valuable, which is the mental benefits and the personal journey and the transformation you can go through if you start this sport as a hobby. And if you are also excited about that, there are a few ways you can help me on that mission. Number one is watching these videos. If you enjoy my channel, if you enjoy the content, thank you so much for watching and tuning in. You are supporting me in that way by investing your time and giving me your attention already is the most valuable resource you have. Thank you. I also have an online course, as I mentioned, so if you are new to parkour, then please check out my beginner course. I'm really proud of it. I think if you are curious about parkour, then you should give it a go. So many good things in my life happened because I followed my curiosity, I followed that feeling, and I can only recommend for everybody else to do the same as much as you can. So if you're curious, please check out the online course, and that will help you learn parkour, and it will help me do more of this and get more people into parkour.
Jason in the editing room here. I forgot to say, link to the online course in the description.
I also have some advanced courses coming, but not yet. But for the people who already do parkour, they're not beginners anymore, you can support this channel and this mission by going to my Patreon.
Link to the Patreon in the description.
I have a lower tier where you can just subscribe to support this channel. Also, you can kind of get some behind the scenes insights. That's where I release little podcast episodes and behind the scenes snippets, little preview of content that's coming. So you can get a look into behind the scenes. You can follow along on the journey as a little thank you for your support. And then there's also a series I'm releasing on my Patreon, which is called Creative Moves at Home. And this is a series for people who already do parkour, who want to expand their movement vocabulary, and who want to learn some moves that I've taken from related disciplines like capoeira, breakdancing, gymnastics, pole dance. But I choose moves out of all these disciplines that are related to parkour and that you can learn at home. And I also choose moves that anybody can learn. So if you're a beginner and you don't feel comfortable, you don't want to go outside to do parkour, this Creative Moves at Home series will also be fun for you. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed this little deep dive into my story. It's was a challenge for me to record this in one take, so thank you for bearing with me. I'll get better at talking to the camera, and all I have to say is keep moving.